In a world where connections often feel dictated by status, wealth, and appearance, one unexpected invitation changed everything. A blind black girl named Isabella, despite her own challenges, reached out to a lonely CEO me. That CEO was me, James Whitmore. As I sat alone in my high-rise office one chilly December afternoon, she asked, "Want to have Christmas dinner with us?" It shook me to my core, but let me backtrack a little. Growing up in the Whitmore family, I was the classic example of privilege, 34 years old, and already the CEO of a prominent educational technology company. But privilege cuts differently in families like mine. Even as I tasted success, I felt this gnawing emptiness. I was constantly torn between who I was and who my family expected me to be. I remember my mother, Victoria, with her perfectly coiffed hair and judgmental glare, scoffing at the very idea of someone like Isabella stepping into our world. What would people think, she'd ask, as if the opinions of our social elite mattered more than compassion itself. The day I met Isabella and her mother Rachel was during a digital inclusion initiative I spearheaded to teach tech skills to underprivileged children. I couldn't believe how radiant Isabella was despite her blindness. She didn't let darkness define her. Every twinkle of her laugh made it seem like she could see right through me, past my suit, my title, and straight into my soul. It was a breath of fresh air, something unfamiliar yet so desperately needed, especially when I was surrounded by my family's prejudice. Every dinner at my parents' house was a lesson in elitism and disdain towards anyone who dared step outside their world of privilege. "This is just how it is," James, my father, would say, his words oozing with a certain disdain for people who didn't look or act like us. Meanwhile, I found comfort in the smiles of those like Isabella, who radiated warmth and determination, a stark contrast to my family's cold expectations. As I listened to them mock my friends, it made my stomach churn. But I didn't have the courage to fight back, not yet. When Isabella asked me to Christmas dinner, it felt like my chest might explode. Here was this brave soul extending her hand to me in the midst of my isolation. I hesitated, hearing my family's disdain replaying in my head like an old record stuck on repeat. But then I thought, what would be the worst that could happen? I had to break free from the shackles of that suffocating elitism. So I said yes. On Christmas Eve, I stepped into Rachel's apartment, and it felt like walking into a completely different world, a cozy space bright with the laughter of friends and family. The contrast to the sterile cold walls of the Whitmore mansion couldn't have been more striking. As I took off my coat, I could hear the plucking of piano keys, the kind of music that pulls at your heart. Isabella was pouring her soul into a piece she'd practiced for weeks. That moment hit me hard. I realized her talent and innocence magnified the toxic behavior of my family, and it made me question everything. But as I enjoyed the warmth of her home, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Make sure it reflects well on our family, James." The weight of her words suffocated me, invading my rare moment of joy. Was I really meant to live this way, shackled by expectations and a legacy of hate? Talking with Isabella and Rachel, I ultimately found myself leaning into those conversations, thinking beyond the confines of blood and wealth. I began to see my family's long-standing racism and the corrupt business practices disguised as charitable acts. I stored all this in the back of my mind like a hidden arsenal waiting for the moment to rise up. That's when I confided in my lawyer and friend David Chun. I'll never forget his expression when I laid it all out for him. It was half shock and half sympathy. "James, you're not just carrying the weight of your family's expectations. You're carrying the weight of their crimes." Together we hatched a plan and attend the annual family charity gala. It was the perfect stage for exposing the truth, especially with Rachel and Isabella at my side. My family believed I was playing along, but little did they know I was ready to fight. As we stepped into that lavish ballroom, a swirl of satin and silk surrounded us. The rich scent of champagne clung to the air, but it did little to mask the underlying rot of hypocrisy that was my family. I felt my heart racing as the moment approached. The moment I'd confront them with everything. I could see Isabella in the corner, her fingers dancing on the piano keys again, pure magic. And when it was my turn to speak, I felt electric. The words flowed. My speech wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration of war against everything my family stood for. I revealed the evidence of their financial misconduct, their bigotry, and I watched as the crowd's faces morphed from admiration to shock, the media capturing every moment. It was as if a dam had broken, the bubbles of privilege shattered, drowning my family in the murky waters of their own greed and hate. And just like that, the Whitmore family became the focal point of scandal, their status crumbling as people began to see the truth behind the facade. Fast forward 6 months, and I found myself in a different role, leading an educational initiative focused on inclusion, inspired by my experience with Isabella and Rachel. Their laughter didn't just fill a room, it filled my life with purpose and empathy. I realized something powerful, something that has guided my journey ever since. Real connections transcend bloodlines. Now, as I sit back and reflect, I can't help but think about how I've changed. I'm not just the CEO anymore. I'm a champion for those voices my family once shunned. And as I embrace my new family, Rachel and Isabella, I understand that it's empathy and love that binds us, not elitism or prejudice. So here's where I leave you with a question. Do our families shape who we are, or do we have the power to shape our own identities regardless of our past? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below on whether you believe we can rise above societal biases and expectations. Because perhaps the real gift we can give this holiday season is making space for love, understanding, and justice together.